Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is Tara Kendrick, and I'm here with Bill Witt, and we're with Senior Resource Center. Today, our topic is David versus Goliath. So we'll be discussing ways to go up against big corporations when you have problems and issues. All right, a Senior Resource Center, there are 4 ways that we help. First is we do comprehensive retirement planning, looking at people's overall portfolio and trying to look out 30 years and see how we can maximize their investments and make sure they don't run out of money before they die. The other piece is the tax planning. So we don't do tax prep, but we just find ways and strategies to help pay less tax over your lifetime. Another big part of our practice is long-term care planning. That includes helping people with looking at different insurance products to pay for long-term care, as well as helping people apply and protect assets to get federal and state programs, including VA and Medicaid. And lastly, estate planning. So looking over your overall estate, making sure you have the right legal documents in order. We're not attorneys, but we just want to make sure that you have plans in place to avoid probate and make sure that you're protected. All right, so we are in part 6. So this is our 6th week of our series of topics. If you missed any of the ones above David and Goliath, you can always go to srctexas.com and go to webinar recordings, and you can watch all the previous ones we've done, as well as the series that we did in 2021. Next week, we're going to have a guest speaker talking about how to tap your home equity to increase your lifetime payout for helping in retirement. And then here's our kind of topics for the last few weeks. So stay tuned. We'll always send an email out saying what's coming up. And then, of course, we'll always have these recorded on our website. All right, so I'm going to introduce Bill Witt, and he is going to take over from here.
Thanks, Tara. Hey, welcome everybody this morning. Appreciate you joining us. This topic is something that's kind of close to my heart. I've always had kind of an angst against bullies, against either individuals or large organizations that seem to flaunt their power and kind of want to enforce their rules over maybe what's fair. Over the years, Tara and I have found that there's large private and government institutions that often take advantage of individuals. And over the 20 years that we've been helping with retirement and different types of planning for retirement and long-term care, we've found out that a number of our clients have been injured or abused or taken advantage of. And over this 20-year period, we've identified a number of very effective ways to get justice. And it's not the typical ways you would think of, which is hiring an attorney and filing a lawsuit, which can prove to be futile and very, very expensive. So today's topics, first, I'd like to just outline kind of the obstacles that we're up against. What is legal justice today? And then I'm going to share with you 4 strategies that we've used on multiple occasions that work. And these are strategies that allow you to take on a Goliath without expending a lot of resource and accomplish justice, accomplish the goals that you're trying to achieve. I'm going to share with you the 2 scariest words that big institutions, big governmental agencies do not want to hear. And then finally, we'll have your questions at the end. So here we go. What is legal justice today? Well, think about it. You take a large organization, big organization, they have size. Add to that, they have lots and lots of money, and that translates into power. And big companies today dictate the rules. They identify how the game is going to be played. And unfortunately, people sometimes are trampled in the process. If you know somebody that's been injured, taken advantage of, I'm going to share strategies with you today that work, that allow you to take down Goliath. And every large Goliath, what do they have? Most of them have an army of lawyers, which means they're ready and willing and able to take on an individual's lawsuit, and they will just grind it out. They will stretch it out. They will delay. The end result is they'll end up costing so much money. Most people concede the game or don't even attempt it, figuring it's an unbeatable adversary. Most of the contracts that we have today require some form of mediation or binding arbitration. And guess who picks the mediators and the arbitrators? The companies. And so they're already in leagues with the people that are going to determine whether you get justice or not. And more often than not, they're just in there to stall and wear you out. The end result is it's if you attack them frontally, the odds of winning are very, very small. So what is the solution? And I'm gonna share a number of strategies, 4 different strategies today. But I will tell you there's 2 underlying themes that run through each of these strategies. We want to look for ways to get someone else to fight your fight. In other words, instead of you hiring an army of attorneys, let's get some other people on your team to fight for you. And second, what you're going to find in this webinar is that large organizations, while they may have lots of money and lots of power and lots of attorneys, they have a weak spot. Every Goliath has a weak spot. And for many of them, it's their image and their reputation. We live at a time when if a company is called out for doing something inappropriate, this morning I was listening to the Today Show, and in Florida, there's a whole protest going on with Disney over their stand regarding some law that the Florida legislature is passing. Well, long story short, Disney's getting a lot of bad press right now, and nobody wants bad press. So, who are the individuals or who are the organizations that you can get to help fight your fight? These are some of the groups that we've worked with in the past. The Texas Attorney General investigates organizations. They have their own team of attorneys, and they're more than willing to go to fight and go to bat for you. Everybody's familiar with the Better Business Bureau. Most people want to maintain a clean, positive image, and when complaints start to pile up, that's an indication that there's a problem with Goliath, with the big organization. What about the Austin American Statesman? Do you think big companies want to see their name in press on the front page? I'll share some stories with you that will tell you how you can use the power of the press to win your justice. KXAN Channel 36 Investigative News. Most of the radio and television stations in the Austin area have investigative news teams, and they're more than hungry to go out and identify places where people are being taken advantage of. Government regulatory agencies, every industry, whether it's banking, insurance, whatever it is, most of them have a government agency, a state agency, that's monitoring their performance. And they don't enjoy it when those government regulators come in and start asking questions. Maybe the most powerful way is different aspects of social media. You go back 20 years ago, if you were wronged, you were kind of a lone eagle out there trying to take on Goliath. But today, with Facebook, with Instagram, with many of these different social links, there's a place where you can start to tell your story. Yelp, others, where people can report their experiences. And these things can gain fire overnight, where suddenly thousands of people are aware of bad practice on the part of a large organization, and they can bring to bear power against that. So here are my 4 strategies that work, and I can assure you these work because I've used each of these multiple times to achieve a level of justice. The first one's the threat of a class action lawsuit. Notice I say the threat, not actually a class action lawsuit. I'm going to show you how the possibility of a class action lawsuit can quickly motivate organizations to take action. Man to man. Sometimes you can sit across the desk from a major representative of Goliath, and you've got to have your arguments and your strategies panned out well in order to win the day. I'm going to show you how that works. The third one is one we've used multiple times, and it's the process of writing 2 letters. And I'll explain how the content of 2 letters can motivate some of the biggest entities you're familiar with to change their practice and to honor their responsibilities. And last but not least, I'll show you how building a website can achieve justice. So here we go. And as I said, I don't like bullies. So I'm going to show you how to take on bullies. If you're watching in the news, which I know you are, what's going on in Ukraine is an insult to humanity. Uh, Vladimir Putin thought that he could overrun a small country and that no one would say anything because back in 2014, when he took Crimea, the world did pretty much nothing. But today he's run up against the resolve of the Ukrainian people, and he's finding out that winning is not always as easy as it sounds. Here's a man who has all the power you could want. He's one of the richest men in the world. And I believe before Ukraine is over with, he may well not be in office. He may be dead, and he's going to lose his wealth. He's run up against his own Waterloo. So let's talk some strategies, and let's start with the threat of a class action lawsuit. Let me tell you the story. One of our clients, Tom, had to take on a large insurance company. Tom had purchased a product. It's called a variable annuity. Tara and I don't offer these. We're not fans of them because the value in a variable annuity can go up or down with fluctuations in the stock market. You can earn money and gain money, but you can also lose. They also have fairly high fees, so we don't offer them. But Tom had purchased an annuity and put $200,000 into it. Then what happened? The market dropped, and Tom lost half the value in his variable annuity. Well, that's when he came to see me and said, I'm kind of sick and tired of this product. I've really gotten hit. And I said, well, let me have a copy of that contract that you've got. And I spent time reading the contract. And in there was a provision that said, even if the market dropped, the insurance company would honor the original deposited value. They would make good on the full amount. And so I said, well, Tom, we've got an opportunity here. You've lost $100,000 in value. What if we take 95 of the remaining 100 out and put it in a product that's going to grow, never correct again with the market, and leave 5,000 in? If we do that, you'll have a paid up $50,000 death benefit. In other words, the company said they would agree to guarantee the original deposit less any withdrawals up to the original value. So we take 95 out, put it in something safe, and they've guaranteed him essentially a paid up $50,000 life insurance policy. And we contacted the insurance company and they said, yeah, that would work. So Tom did that. He took 95 out and we deposited it into a safe account. Well, lo and behold, a month later, Tom got a letter from the insurance company, and the company said they had reinterpreted their contract and they would no longer honor this provision to guarantee the original deposited value. Well, I thought back to when I went through training to offer different kinds of products like insurance products. And one of the things I'd remembered is that insurance contracts are pretty much one-sided. When you deal with an insurance company, they write the contract. You don't have any choice of making changes to it. You have to either accept it or reject it based on the way they've written it. But because of that provision, if the company attempts to come back and reinterpret their own contract, that's seen as abusive. Well, here we are. We're faced with a large insurance company. This is one I'm not going to mention their name, but they are a big player. They run ads on TV. You know them very well. And so my question is, what can we do to try to get Tom justice? And what we do is I contacted the Texas Department of Insurance. That's the regulatory agency in our state that monitors insurance companies. Now, when I did, I found out something very quickly. Texas Department of Insurance, while they monitor these big companies, they rarely, if ever, file a lawsuit against them. To a large extent, they're kind of a weak sister. They're monitoring the insurance company, but they're not going to take them on legally. That's expensive. But they do have one provision, one option that we wanted to take advantage of. The only option that I found interesting was they offered to set up what's known as binding mediation. And that's where the insurance company and Tom and I come to a table and we list our grievances, we list our concerns, and we may have a chance a day in court. But before we even went in for this so called hearing, I asked the mediator one simple request. Would you ask the insurance company to bring in a list of all their Texas clients? Since I knew that Tom wasn't the only one that had been hurt by the market drop in this type of product, I said, have them bring in a list of their Texas clients. Well, what happened? Within a month, Tom got another letter before we could even go into mediation, and it said the insurance company had reinterpreted the provisions of the contract and now in writing agreed to honor those original provisions if we would drop our mediation session. Well, Tom got what he wanted. He was made whole. He had a $50,000 paid up life insurance policy. He's got a letter stating that in writing, and the insurance company conceded. You can take on big organizations. You don't have to file a lawsuit. All you have to do is get their attention. In this case, the potential of a class action lawsuit motivated the insurance company to fold. This is one that man to man. Let's talk about this strategy. Tara and I have done Medicaid planning for people that need help in nursing homes, and our goal is real simple: protect assets, qualify for Medicaid. And there are rules within the Medicaid handbook that let married couples protect all their assets and let single people protect 60, 70, maybe 100% of their assets and qualify for Medicaid benefits. So Tara and I have done this for 20 years. Well, a number of years ago, the state of Texas, the Department of Health and Human Services went through a budget shortfall, and they decided to lay off some of their staff. They also made a change in Medicaid rules, and those are important. You have to always play by Health and Human Services rules. The problem was they laid off a staff member who was responsible for posting rule changes up onto the Medicaid website. That's where Tara and I go to make sure that we're always being compliant with the rules. Well, since they laid off this lady, the rule change never got posted. And a couple of months later, two of our families got flagged as not being compliant, not being eligible for Medicaid benefits. But we went through the normal process of trying to understand the rule change and ask for an exception. And 6, 7 months into this, they were still denied. And now they've run up some huge bills at the nursing home. And I contacted the head of policy within Texas Health and Human Services. And after an interesting conversation, I got them to agree that these two clients should qualify for Medicaid. We're about 7 months into this ordeal, and I thought everything was good. And then I got a phone call back from the head of policy, and he said, I'm sorry to say this, but I've been overridden by our top legal counsel. The top lawyer at Health and Human Services said, I'm not going to honor that request. I'm denying these benefits. Well, I'm up against a huge state agency. They've got teams of lawyers. Should I fold my cards? Should I walk away? Should I disappoint the clients that we've taken on? Well, I decided not to. I decided to have a meeting with the top legal counsel, man to man. And when I went into the meeting, it was actually a very brief meeting. I explained the situation. I explained how this lady had been laid off. She didn't file the rule change. And we were caught up in this mess. And I said, this is really going to be embarrassing. To which the legal counsel said, sure are. You're going to have to go back to those families and tell them you're not able to help them. And then I said, well, I'm not so much worried about my reputation. I'm worried about the reputation of the agency of Health and Human Services. Because with God as my witness, in the next 2 weeks, there will be an article on the front page of the American Statesman, our local newspaper, and it's going to dissect everything that's happened, how the state had a layoff, how they laid off the lady that posted rule changes, how the rule changes weren't posted, and how two of my families are now in harm's way. And I said, your name and my name are both going to be in that article. And then I said magic words. I said, isn't there some way to save both of our reputations? And he got very creative, and we found a way to get exceptions for both of these families and to deliver to them the result I had promised 9 months earlier. You think you can't take on a state agency or a governmental agency? Think again. They can be taken down. A third strategy that Tara and I have used over and over again is what I call writing two letters. Let me tell you the story of Jane. Jane was a client of ours. She came to me with a problem. She had gone through a very serious medical crisis with cancer, and she had money in a brokerage account. And as her medical condition was worsening, she went to her advisor and said, look, for the next 6 months, I'm going to be going through some intensive treatment. I cannot afford to spend time managing my limited portfolio, my limited funds. So I want you to get me into something that's totally safe with no risk. And I'll come back in 6 months and we'll figure out how to redeploy my funds. But during that 6-month period, the stock market dropped. And Jane lost $35,000, about a third of her total savings for retirement. This was important money to Jane. But she's dealing with a huge brokerage house, one that you see their ads on TV every day. And so the question is, she's lost money. What can she do? I mean, we're up against Goliath. Well, I said, Jane, let's write two letters. And the first letter was a summary of the facts. The fact that she had faced a medical crisis, had told her broker, safety, no risk. The fact that she would be back in 6 months, hopefully, God willing. And it stated all the facts, but that then her broker had put her money into risky investments and where she had lost about a third of her money. Well, that first letter got a polite reply back from the brokerage company saying, we understand your situation, but unfortunately, we have to deny your request. And sorry, you lost the money. But then we wrote a second letter. And the second letter summarized Jane's impression of the company. It stated that their behavior, that their whole process they'd gone through seemed like it wasn't fair. And that letter included two very scary words. The two scary words are senior discrimination. Let me tell you something I've learned over 20 years of helping families that have been abused. Most of our clients are retired or nearing retirement. They're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And one thing that no company wants to be identified with is senior discrimination. They don't want to be seen as picking on, taking advantage of seniors. This is a black mark. And in a world where social media can spread the impact of one individual across millions, these companies are very sensitive to these two words. Well, the end result was we sent in a second letter. And it said, we're disappointed you didn't accept my request for compensation for dealing effectively with this problem. And I believe your company and its policies are a form of senior discrimination. A week after we sent the letter, Jane got a call from a vice president from this big brokerage house. And it was a very simple conversation. Jane, we've gotten your second letter. If we make good and replenish your 35,000, can we be assured that this is the end of this event? To which she gladly said, yes, give me my 35,000 and I'm happy to go quietly into the night. We took on a big brokerage company. We took on Goliath. and we beat them. We got justice. Here's another example of writing 2 letters. One of my clients, Ron, and his wife had been with a local credit union, a big credit union. Not going to mention their name, but it's a big one. You know the name. And unfortunately, Ron's wife passed away. She died. And like many people, she died without a will, and she had about $3,000 in her credit union account. And she hadn't named a beneficiary. Well, Ron went in and said, "Hey, I'd kind of like to, get that money." And the credit union said, "Well, our policy is you die with no beneficiary, you must go through probate." Probate's that legal process Tara told you that we try to help people avoid. And in the case of somebody who dies without a will, it's known as dying intestate, dying without a will. The cost in Texas is $4,000 to $5,000. Well, let's do the math on this. Ron's trying to recover 3,000, and it's going to cost 5,000 to get the 3. Doesn't work. And this is a big credit union. They got lots of lawyers. They've got firm policies. How do you take them on? Well, we decided to write 2 letters. But in this case, we only had to send 1. This often happens. I found that the potential, if you write that first letter correctly, the institution you're going up against understands exactly what's at stake, and they find ways to provide justice. So what did the first letter say? It said Ron and his wife had accounts at this credit union dating back to 1983. Ron and his wife had been married for 38 years when she passed away. They had never had any kids, and neither one had been married before. So there were no other claimants on this asset. I went on to say that their home, which would normally go through probate, well, we found a title company that was willing to accept an affidavit of heirship to take his wife's name off the title. They had 2 cars with her name on it. We went to the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, and once again, they agreed to accept an affidavit of heirship to take her name off the vehicles. So everything was clear except for this $3,000. And the credit union said, "Well, we're not going to release it until you file for probate." So in the letter, we stated all these facts, and we said, we're asking for an exception. Oh, in addition, since Ron's, the other financial accounts that his wife had all named Ron, he had plenty of money. The 3,000 wasn't a game breaker. It just wasn't fair. And we said, we want to get that money. And we asked for an exception, and Ron agreed. I'll hold the credit union safe, harmless from any other claims. And he had the money to back that up. The end result was credit union, within a week, released the funds because they knew what was coming. I'd written a second letter, and the second letter said very clearly, "We're disappointed," if they had rejected that first letter, "we're disappointed you've rejected our request for an exception to your policy. And since many Texans live and die without a will, many people probably have small values in their bank or credit union accounts that they're subject to lose because they didn't name a beneficiary. And since this probably affects many Texans, I believe your policy is a form of senior discrimination." But we didn't have to send the second letter. The credit union realized what was coming. Had we sent that second letter and had they rejected it, guess who would have been visiting the credit union within the next week? I would have called KXAN News investigative reporters. I would have called the American Statesman. I would have called the Texas Banking Commission. I would have called the Texas Attorney General and the Better Business Bureau. I would have had people all over the credit union. Their reputation was more important than $3,000. They released the funds. So you think you can't take a credit union on? or a big financial institution, trust me, if you play the game correctly and craft your arguments correctly, and we help people do that, you can take on Goliath. Here's another example uh, how building a website can be a very effective tool. I have up here client versus home builder. All right, I'm gonna come clean. This is my wife and myself. We're the clients. Uh, we wanted to build a home out in Burnett County. We had a lot. We had a carriage house on the lot, a starter home. We wanted to build our main house. So we went out and we evaluated and checked out different home builders, and we found what we thought was a great home builder. Everything they had built was wonderful. The quality looked great. And so we engaged them. And what we found was their subs, their contractors were excellent. All the work they did couldn't raise an argument. It was all high quality. But what we also found was this builder had horrible project management. What do I mean by that? Well, we spent a year and a half before we started building, creating drawings, prints, examples of the specifications of our new house. And when we got into construction, the builder came back and said, you know those fancy covers that are on the top of your chimneys? They weren't bid. Our contractor forgot to bid them, so here's a price for that enhancement. What? Wait a second, they're in the specs. Well, we forgot to bid it. Had we bid it, you would have had to pay more, so no harm, no foul. We had a bookcase in the living room. They'd left that out, and they wanted more money for the bookcase. We have a hot tub behind our house that's fed from an LP tank, and they'd forgot to include the cost of the gas line, another $1,500. No harm, no foul, right? Wait a second. We got specifications. We told you exactly what's supposed to be in the house. You gave us a price. We thought that was the price. We had change orders. And when we built our carriage house, uh, we had some change orders, and our builder would come to us, different builder would come to us and say, here's the cost of this change. And we could either accept it or decline it based on our budget and what we wanted to pay for. But when it came to this new builder, we'd say, hey, we need some extra lights in one of our rooms. And he'd say, great, I'll do a change order. Well, they'd come in 2 days, 3 days later. Here's the bill. What? Here's the bill. We put them in. Well, wait a second. You're supposed to give us a chance to review it. Well, the work's already done. Here's the bill. On budget, we had a spreadsheet that showed the budget. And 5, 6 months, 8 months into the building process, we're showing up being $60,000 over budget. And I started to complain, saying, hey, I thought, and the builder said, oh, don't worry, it'll all work out. It'll all work out. Well, wait a second. You're asking for progress payments. It'll all work out. Well, we're now waist deep into the water. We're halfway into building a house, and we've start to realize we've got a bad home builder. Great quality, horrible project management. So my wife and I talked, was it time for a lawsuit? And we started thinking, boy, this could be expensive. This could take a long time. Will we ever get any justice? Well, I came up with a better solution. I went and purchased a derivative of the builder's website. I got their URL, their name, and their name is with a .com on the end of it. But I went out and bought the same URL with a .biz on the end of it. And I wrote up the content that I was going to put into the website. And I was going to expose all of the experience, the lack of specification control, the lack of change orders, the lack of budget. I was going to write it all up and explain how the builder had treated us. And when I showed this to the builder, they quickly began to realize it's all true, not making stories up, but it would be an embarrassment to their reputation to their image. I mean, if you're going to pick a home builder and one of them has this adjunct website saying, here are some things that another client has experienced, and you start to realize these guys don't honor specifications, they don't use change orders, they don't keep budgets up to date. If you have to have a choice, who are you going to pick as your builder? Probably not the one we used. You're going to go somewhere else. Well, after this come to Jesus session, I didn't have to put the website up. I bought the URLs, but we never put it up because the builder suddenly realized we weren't your typical client. We're not going to file a lawsuit. We're going to attack what was very sacred to the builder, their reputation, their image. They didn't want our story out there. Long story short, we got a nice house. We wrapped it up on professional terms, and we're happy where we live. But once again, you take on people like a home builder or a governmental agency or an insurance company or a brokerage firm or a bank or credit union. These are large organizations, and they tend to write the rules. So if we're going to attack, we have to attack in a way that doesn't cost us an arm and a leg. If you've been harmed, I assure you there is a way to get justice. So, kind of a summary. Know this: every entity, everyone, every Goliath has a weakness. Putin's finding it in Ukraine. Tom found it with the insurance company. Ron found it with a credit union. Every Goliath has a weakness. We have to identify it, and then we have to potentially enlist the support of others. We don't want to hire a league of attorneys or go broke paying for lawyers. We want to get other entities that are involved in helping people achieve justice. A KXAN, an Austin American Statesman, social media. There are a number of ways to take on Goliath. It's important to remember that image and reputation are more important than power. Disney right now is reeling under the protest that's going on in Florida. Other companies have been taken on over the last 10, 15 years. And social media can be a devastating tool. Once a complaint is filed and other people share it and express their support for the complaint, you can get an army of people to take down a Nike or an American Express or whoever the entity is. They can be taken down by popular pressure by individuals. I'd suggest lawsuits are something you may want to consider, but they should always be a last resort. My experience, limited experience with lawsuits, they're long, painful, and expensive. If you have to go that route, go it. But we found that there's many, many easier ways to deal with getting Goliath to bend and grant exceptions. So if you have a problem, if you or someone you know has been wronged, have them call us. We're happy to meet with them. Our consultations are always free. We'll share the experience we've had. These are just 4 or 5 simple cases. We've got a dozen or more of large entities that you'd go, there's no way you can beat Goliath. Well, maybe, maybe not. Give us a chance, and maybe we can help craft a story, a strategy that'll help you to achieve justice. Well, that's all I've got for today. Tara, do we have any questions?
I didn't see any so far. If you guys have any questions, you want to pop them into that talk bubble at the top of your screen. We're happy to answer them. But in the meantime, just to kind of review, we have all of these webinars are on our website at srctexas.com. If you need to get a hold of us, our number's on the screen, and also you can email bill@srctexas.com or tara@srctexas.com. I'll be sending out an email with a follow-up just to give you the recording for today. Also to have a link to the sign up for next week when we talk about how to tap assets in your house for equity. And I guess that's it for today. So we appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week.